In the news tonight, the United Nations Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs says Jordan is assuming a huge role towards the refugees and that the UN is seeking to secure the necessary aid for Jordan to pursue its role towards them. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says Syria's President Bashar al-Assad has to go, but the timing of his departure should be decided through negotiation. And Hungary and Croatia trade threats and accusations as thousands of migrants pour over their borders, deepening the discord and disarray in Europe over how to handle the tide of humanity reaching its shores. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. His Majesty King Abdullah sent a cable of condolences to His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Vice President and Prime Minister of the UAE and ruler of Dubai, over the passing away of his son, Sheikh Rashid bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. In his cable, the King expressed his deep sorrow and heartfelt condolences over the death of Sheikh Rashid. The son of the ruler of Dubai died of a heart attack this morning at the age of 34 and was laid to rest after a grand funeral procession in Dubai. Sheikh Rashid bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum was the eldest son of Sheikh Mohammed. He was an avid sportsman and horse racing enthusiast. The United Arab Emirates declared a 3-day mourning period, and flags will be flown at half-mast at public departments and institutions across the UAE. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour said that Jordan, a country with poor resources, is hosting about 1.4 million Syrian refugees at a time rich countries of the European Union are struggling to cope with the influx of refugees from the war-torn country. Mansour made his remarks as he received Stephen O'Brien, United Nations Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs. He said the international community is called upon to stand with Jordan in the current circumstances as the kingdom is facing economic hardships and water shortages. The Prime Minister said that only small numbers of Syrians are staying in refugee camps in the kingdom, but the vast majority are living with the local communities where they compete with Jordanians over jobs and pose pressure on schools. O'Brien commended Jordan for hosting such a large number of Syrians, saying he recognized the burdens it had shouldered. He said the UN, through its affiliate agencies concerned with humanitarian issues, is seeking to secure the necessary aid for Jordan to pursue its role towards the refugees. Later, O'Brien visited the Zaatari refugee camp in Mafraq Governorate for a first-hand look at the enormous impact the refugees had on Jordan and the burdens it had undertaken despite the limited resources. O'Brien said Jordan is assuming a huge role towards the refugees, offering them assistance, services and protection since they set foot on its territory. The humanitarian situation, he said, is in desperate need for support, stressing the ongoing UN efforts to provide services and care in various fields. More than 600,000 refugees are registered in Jordan, with most of them living in urban areas, and around 100,000 Syrians in the camps, according to the United Nations Refugee Agency, the UNHCR.
The purpose of my visit is to come and understand how the very difficult times that there are in Syria is having an effect here in Jordan, and how the Jordanian people have been able to be so generous in supporting the people in need who have come across from Syria, and working very much with the Jordanian government. The UN agencies are able to be in partnership in providing both the camp and the services that are so necessary. I had an excellent meeting with His Excellency the Prime Minister, and I was very pleased that we were able to share a really clear view and analysis that the absolute overriding priority is where there are humanitarian needs, wherever they arise, however they arise. It is our combined duty to try and meet those needs and to give people the chance to survive and to make sure that we protect civilians from harm.
Israeli jets struck 3 sites in the Gaza Strip in response to multiple rocket attacks from the coastal enclave into southern Israel yesterday. And in Jabalia, north of Gaza City, a telecommunications tower was destroyed. Late yesterday, at least 2 rockets were fired into Israel, one striking the town of Ashkelon, while the second was shot down by a missile defense system. A Salafist group calling itself the Sheikh Omar Hadid Brigade claimed responsibility for the rocket attack. Al-Qaeda's Syria affiliate and its allies have executed at least 56 government troops at a military airport they recently seized in the northwest, a monitoring group said. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said Al-Nusra Front and the insurgents shot dead members of the Syrian army who were being held as prisoners execution style inside the Abu Dhuhr airport. The monitoring group added that the mass killing at Abu Dhuhr air base took place a few days ago, citing sources on the ground. The air base was captured from the army earlier this month in northwestern Syria. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said the United States is willing to negotiate the conditions and timing for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to step down from power and urged Russia to convince him to negotiate his exit. Speaking in London after talks with British Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond, Kerry called for a renewed diplomatic effort to resolve the conflict in Syria, which he said was as urgent a need as fighting Daesh terrorists. Declaring Assad has to go, Kerry said there was some flexibility in the modality and timing of his departure. Kerry said the United States welcomed Russia's involvement in tackling Daesh in Syria, but a worsening refugee crisis underscored the need to find a compromise that could also lead to political change in the country. The British Foreign Secretary said the situation in Syria was now more complicated with Russia's increased military involvement in the country, adding that Assad could not be part of Syria's long-term future.
That's what we're looking for. We're prepared to negotiate. Is Assad prepared to negotiate, really negotiate? Is Russia prepared to bring him to the table and actually find the solution to this violence? Those are the pregnant questions. And we've made it very clear, we've been open, we've made it very clear that we're not being doctrinaire about the specific date or time. We're open. But right now, Assad has refused to have a serious discussion, and Russia has refused to help bring him to the table in order to do that. So that's why we're where we are. Refugees seeking a better life cannot be properly addressed just by addressing the numbers of refugees coming into a country or providing more support to them. It has to be addressed by dealing with the root cause, which is the violence in Syria and the lack of hope and possibility of a future that so many people in that region feel as a consequence of the violence that's taking place.
Because of the Russian engagement, the situation in Syria is becoming more complicated, and I think we need to discuss this as part of a much bigger problem: the migration pressures, the humanitarian crisis in Syria, as well as the need to defeat ISIL.
At least 55 militants were killed when Turkish warplanes hit Kurdistan Workers' Party PKK camps in northern Iraq overnight, as Ankara shows no sign of easing up strikes on insurgents ahead of a November 1st election. Security sources said the jets took off from a base in Diyarbakir in Turkey's southeast and later returned without damage. Turkey's largely Kurdish southeast has been hit by almost daily waves of deadly fighting between PKK militants and security forces since the collapse of a ceasefire in July. Security forces have responded by launching frequent bombing raids into mountainous northern Iraq, where the PKK has camps. Hungary and Croatia traded threats today as thousands of exhausted migrants poured over their borders, deepening the disarray in Europe over how to handle the tide of humanity. Hungary accused Croatia of violating its sovereignty by sending buses packed with migrants over their joint border. And the Croatian Prime Minister said that, unlike Hungary, he would not use brute force to keep people out, nor would his government make them stay against their will. Europe today is mired in migrant confusion.
This train leaving Hungary packed with migrants gives a snapshot of European confusion and contradiction in the face of a growing crisis. At least 1,000 migrants arrived in Hungary by train and bus from Croatia on Friday, watched by Hungarian security forces sworn to keep them out. Now they're being transferred onwards by train, destination unknown, but possibly towards the Austrian border. Others were held at the same station, their train seized by police because authorities said no prior notice was given of its arrival. Croatia denied Hungary's account and that 40 of its police officers escorting the train were disarmed or arrested. Slovenian police used tear gas on migrants trying to cross its border from Croatia. About 500 people crammed into the no-man's land between the two, demanding to be let in. Police unleashed the pepper spray as they tried to push past. They were given medical treatment back on the Croatian side, but refused to leave the border, hoping they would eventually get through. The flood of migrants into Croatia continued unabated on Friday as more poured in from neighbouring Serbia. About 17,000 have entered Croatia since Hungary closed its border with Serbia 2 days before. One doctor working with Médecins Sans Frontières says the migrants are very determined.
Yesterday they were at our northern border, and since it got closed and they couldn't go, they organized themselves very, very fast, and they are here.
This Croatian fairground now operates as a makeshift refugee camp as the country struggles to cope with the influx. Croatia's government now says it will allow migrants to pass through en route to other countries, as most don't want to claim asylum there. The flood of migrants trying to reach wealthier nations in the north and west has wrong-footed the European Union. It has no common policy to deal with the biggest wave of migration to its shores since World War II.
Aircraft from the Saudi-led coalition attacked Yemen's interior ministry in the capital Sana'a and launched several other raids on Houthi sites in the heart of the city. About 10 airstrikes were launched on the ministry building, a police camp close to it, and a military building. The raids also targeted the presidential complex and a party building of former President Ali Abdullah Saleh, which had already been destroyed in 2011. Several thousand troops have also amassed in the Yemeni desert province of Ma'rib to provide tactical and military support to Yemeni troops fighting to oust the Houthis. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has sworn in a new government a week after the previous cabinet resigned in an unanticipated move amid allegations of corruption against some officials. The new government will be led by Prime Minister Sharif Ismail, who formerly held the petroleum portfolio. The new cabinet includes 16 new ministers, 3 of them women out of 33 in total. Most of the key posts, including finance, investment, foreign affairs and interior, remained unchanged. Former Prime Minister Ibrahim Mahlib has been appointed as Sisi's assistant for national and strategic projects. Egypt is due to hold long-delayed parliamentary elections next month. To London and the Fashion Week that kicked off in a new Art Deco car park venue, with Bora Aksu among the first designers to showcase his look for Spring-Summer 2016. The Turkish-born British-based designer's collection was inspired by his childhood summer holidays spent in his family home in the Turkish coastal city of Izmir. His fashion focus this season was on bursts of color and different shades of light, which he reflected in the use of silk and lace in his garments. Aksu's magical garden was emphasized with his use of fresh flowers that models wore as part of a headdress. This is the 62nd edition of Fashion Event, which runs until Tuesday, with Burberry, Vivienne Westwood, Red Label and Topshop among the brands showing their collections. And in another show, Scottish fashion designer Holly Fulton unveiled her spring-summer collection. Her designs paid homage to the 70s, with Fulton pairing retro prints with flashes of neon, sequined colors and embroidery. Disgruntled Arsenal manager Arsene Wenger criticized referee Mike Dean after he failed to sanction Chelsea's controversial striker Diego Costa, but sent off 2 Arsenal players in a bad-tempered London derby. Arsenal lost 2-0 at Stamford Bridge, but it was Costa's tangling with their defence that most offended the manager. Television replays showed that Costa pushing Laurent Koscielny in the face during tussles in the Arsenal penalty area in the first half. Wenger also suggested the foul that led to Chelsea's first goal should not have been given. Arsenal's woes were compounded when Santi Cazorla was sent off after a second yellow card. Speaking after the match, it was clear there is no love lost between Wenger and his Chelsea counterpart, Jose Mourinho.
Expect that kind of game, of course, but you expect we were not surprised, but you expect the referee to make the right decision. For example, I don't deny that Gabriel is sent off. He deserves it. You know, it has not touched him at all, although he goes well down. You know, but from very little. But he should not have done it, and he deserves the red card. I agree, but you want just the referee to make the right decisions.
I played against Arsenal, I don't know, 12, 15, 18 times, I don't know. And only once he didn't moan. And in that day, we lost the game, we lost the cup. It was not good for us. We behaved in a fantastic way. No excuses, not crying, not moaning, just Mr. Jose Mourinho, my players, and Chelsea Football Club.
But you did not.
Barcelona face Levante tomorrow in La Liga, a team that are having to adjust to injury problems. Barca coach Luis Enrique said he expects to have Dani Alves fit for the match, but added that he will need to rely on his youth players over the coming months due to injuries and the FIFA transfer ban on the club. Claudio Bravo, Thomas Vermaelen, Douglas and Rafinha have also been in the treatment room. Asked whether stars Lionel Messi or Neymar could be placed in the midfield or the defence to help the team, Enrique said he only wanted them close to the rival's goal. Barca have won their 3 opening league matches. And finally, fair weather continues in most regions tonight with some clouds and northwesterly light to moderate winds. As for tomorrow, relatively hot conditions prevail across the kingdom with westerly light to moderate winds. Further south, the Gulf of Aqaba should expect hot conditions, while winds will be northerly moderate and the seas calm. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. The United Nations Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs says Jordan is assuming a huge role towards the refugees and that the UN is seeking to secure the necessary aid for Jordan to pursue its role towards them. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says Syria's President Bashar al-Assad has to go, but the timing of his departure should be decided through negotiation. And Hungary and Croatia trade threats and accusations as thousands of migrants pour over their borders, deepening the discord and disarray in Europe over how to handle the tide of humanity reaching its shores. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Alia Tuqan. Thank you for joining us and have a good night.